There you go.
Hey traders, Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com on 7/12/2015. In this video we'll cover the indices, why I think we're just going to bounce and perhaps be rejected at the 50-period moving average overhead. We'll look at the China situation, Shanghai, and of course Greece continues to be the topic before the open tonight on futures. We'll also talk about Tick and Tick-Q. They're both trending lower. NYSE and NASI both are trending lower as well. We're looking for a cross upward. Breadth, we saw two MDDs in the last 2 weeks. One was 21-1 and one last week was 15-1. We're looking for an MAD, or a major accumulation day, of greater than 90% to signal that institutions are back. In addition, we saw the bounce zone for equities last week on CPC, which we got. The US dollar pulled back to a previous breakout level. Bonds, yields are higher, TLT moved lower. As we mentioned before, when the 10 EMA is below the 30, look for rejection at the 30, which is what we saw. Junk bonds, risk is off, that trend is down. Commodities, we see crude oil range bound, but pulled back to a breakout level that we saw in April. Maybe we see a bounce this week. Copper's lower, gold and silver flat since November, haven't gone anywhere. We'll look at some setups on the IBD50. We'll also show you how we trade those using the 10 Stow MACD setup and how we enter in the morning when we're considering a trade. Don't forget to check out our new channel, ticker.tv, where we typically do at least 2 or 3 sessions at 9 p.m. during the week after the close. We are currently in the sideways range for 9 days now. We came up and touched the upper trend line again, and in the zone where the 10 EMA is dropping down below the 50. The 50 is starting to turn lower. We see MACD is negative. It's below the zero line. Whenever it's below the zero line, it's telling you the 12-period EMA is below the 26, and we typically look for short positions only. If you're trading long, you're only looking for counter trend moves. We are presently looking for a rejection at the 50-period moving average. Anything could happen, of course, with the Greece news, but for the time being, this looks pretty negative. If you draw a trend line down through this area here and one across the top, you can see a wedge. But for the most part, this looks pretty bearish. Until the MACD gets above the zero line, this still looks pretty negative. Note that tick cumulative still moving lower. It could cross over to the upside in the near future. If we look at an Ichimoku version of the same chart, here's that same range, and note that Kumo is just overhead. We have Tikin-san and Kijun-san right in the same area, and we have Chiku encountering the Kumo as we speak. This could continue up into price action, in which area I see being rejected and the bears taking over control again. I think we could see one more dip down. We're only down 4% or so. The highs, we're only down 4% at this level here. As we showed on the previous chart, if we consider this chart here, we can see that 4.74% would be a move from 212.59, this high, down to this low at 202.51, which is these previous lows, the pivot that we saw in March. So keep that in mind going into the week if you're trading spiders. Options, we have calls going into the morning. We'll probably take most of those off if we see a pop in the morning. If we look at the comp with the same mindset, note that we've broke down below this trend line, this ascending channel, this Kirby level that we're trying to get back above. We just got back inside of that on Friday. Note that MACD is below the zero line. We haven't seen that since January when we had this sideways range. It's very possible we could put in a sideways range again like we did here. If MACD manages to get back above the zero line, we'll reassess that. The one bullish factor that we were looking at last week was the NDX A50R, the number of stocks trading above their 50-period moving average, was in an extreme level, an area where we saw moves higher in the past, so we could see that as well. Watch Stow if it continues to move higher, that could bode well for the bulls. If you're bearish, you want to see this get rejected around the 20-period moving average or this area in general this week. The Russell looks pretty much the same as the other two indices. We pulled back to this extension of a trend line. We're right at the 20, right below the 20, the 50, and just above the 10-period EMA, where we closed on Friday. MACD is firmly below the zero line. Note when we dipped below in May, the same degree, that we had a similar pullback, but we did rebound off of that sharply, and it took a couple of weeks for us to get back above zero. You want to see the indices stay above the zero line on MACD if you're bullish. If you're bearish, you want to see this dip back down in the negative direction. Keep an eye on STO. This does indicate that we could see further upside if prices continue to close ever nearer the high of the day, going over the next couple of days into the week. This is the NAMO, the McClellan oscillator for the NASDAQ. We hit an extreme level of minus 63.29 and closed at minus 440. So we are moving back towards the zero line. If we have a crossover, that could bode well for the bulls. We'll see NYSE turn back up if that's the case, or we might have a crossover to trade similar to what we saw in February. So keep an eye on the NASDAQ and NAMO this week if you trade the index. NYMO for the New York Stock Exchange McClellan oscillator. We saw similar extremes over the last 2 weeks. We managed to close positive 1918 on Friday, as well as NYSE trying to turn back up, the summation index. So if we get a crossover to the upside, that could bode well for the bulls. If you're bearish, you want to see NYMO dip back down sharply and NYSE continue to move lower. For the most part, it's still trending lower. We still haven't seen a cross. The New York Stock Exchange Elder Impulse System. Note all of the red sticks and blue sticks. Few green sticks down here. We had one on Friday, which we should take note of. But we came right up to the 200-period moving average and closed a little bit lower than that. We're above the 10-period EMA. We bounced just shy of the 50% Fibonacci level from the October low up to recent highs. But what's important about this chart is the two MDDs we saw over the last 2 weeks. The 21-to-1 down volume to up volume, and the 15-to-1, 16-to-1 last week as well. We want to see an MAD, a major accumulation day, like we saw back here in mid-December, of at least 90% or better. Note, MACD is still below the zero line, so we want to see that get back above the zero line to be more bullish going into the rest of the summer. Shifting gears to currencies, the US dollar pulled back to this breakout of this trend line. We saw some buyers step in on Friday. We're back very close to the 10-period EMA, and MACD is above the zero line. So this is positive for the dollar. We could see higher prices. Currently, we see STO moving a little bit lower, but this was quite bullish on Friday, where we saw bulls step in at the 20-period moving average. If you are bullish equities, you want to see this drop, and if you're bearish equities, you want to see this rally this week. Copper moved lower. We saw it down towards the 2015 January lows. We looked at gold as well. It's back down to the lows that we saw in November. Silver looks pretty much the same. And we have oil, which resumed lower, breaking down out of this channel that we pointed out, that you should either trade to the downside if it breaks lower, or trade to the upside if it breaks higher out of this channel. It did in fact trade lower, came all the way down to the previous breakout level, a little bit further down than this breakout level in April, and then it decided to start to reverse. So we'll watch this to see if this is a bear flag. If the US dollar moves higher, oil will probably move back down again and maybe build a larger base down here from this level at 59.60 across these levels here. And we can only reassess when the price print. So keep an eye on oil this week as well as the US dollar. So let's take a look at some setups for the week. We have a new IBD50 list for July the 11th. We compiled yesterday. You can see which names are there. We have a couple of new names. ComScore, I think that's new. We have HRTG, Heritage Insurance Holdings. PGTI looks pretty good. We published a blog post on those 5 IBD setups that we were looking at. Blackhawk, Edward Life Sciences, PGTI, which was looking really good. We were noting the growth in this building constructions product group, and we were very interested in some of the setups in names like Ozark, which reports on Monday after the close, as well as AGN, Allergan. Alright, so be sure to check those out on the blog. Here's the address right here, and it's this particular post here, 5 for 50. So we'll look at some more setups, and this is the list you can check out at your leisure. Allergan is one that we were paying attention to. The stock was broke above the volume by price level here. There's no overhead supply to speak of. Most of this bar is green, a little bit red. Prices are above the 10 EMA. We see volume. Stow is turning back up, and MACD is above its signal line and also above the 0 line. So that's very positive for the stock. So if we were going to trade this stock tomorrow, what we would look at is a 15-minute chart or perhaps a 5-minute chart, which I've already marked up, which shows you the price action on Friday. If Monday were to occur an exact replica of AGN, this is showing what's called the 30-minute opening range. We take the low and the high of the first 30 minutes. So this is the low and this is the high. These are 15-minute bars or candles. So a break above is a long, and a break below, if we're thinking about getting into a stock, would be a no-go signal. Okay. On Thursday, we saw a spinning top, which you can see here we had highs and we had lows, and we closed just in the middle here. So if you look at that daily chart again, you can see that doji or spinning top. Okay, we didn't close above the 10-period EMA on the Thursday, so using that as an example, you could see how we normally look at a trade setup for a long. If you were going to take this long tomorrow, we would look for a similar setup. We're not expecting this kind of a break, but you never know. So look at the first 30 minutes. If it breaks higher, that's a good signal for you to go long on the stock with a 10 Stow MACD setup, such as it is on AGN. Bank of the Ozarks reports after the close tomorrow, so be aware of that. Mikey and I both traded this stock. He traded it from this breakout down here, I believe, around 37.50. I think you might still have some of it, but typically we would trade a breakout and we would keep moving our stops higher. You can see, at least I take a breakout here. The stock continues to move higher. This might have been a stop here where it takes out the previous day's low. We also consider the ATR, so it's very possible that we didn't take this out. And we'll continue to trade this higher until we take out a low substantially that also includes the low of the day of the previous day plus half of the ATR of that stock. So we would have definitely got taken out here on this dip down to 43. So you would have got about a $3 or $4 return by the time you got stopped out on this stock. It rose again, got above the 10-period EMA, then it sold off recently after hitting a high on this doji candle at the upper Bollinger Band, moved back down below the 10-period EMA, got stopped out the second time, and we waited for indications that we might resume the trend. So it's going to report after the close tomorrow. So we'll wait until that happens, and hopefully we don't get too far above this level here. Maybe we buy some after hours if earnings are received well, and we can get something in around the $46, $47 range. This is a 10E Stow MACD setup. The short duration is below the zero line, but the medium-term duration is still above. MACD is turning on both of these, and Stow is leading higher. We want to see higher volume. We probably won't see that tomorrow because earnings are after the close. Blackhawk Networks. This one's looking pretty good. It broke out of this pennant we pointed out last week. That occurred on Friday. Note the Bollinger Bands are starting to narrow. Prices above the 10 EMA. This was a 10E Stow MACD setup. We dipped down a little bit further than we wanted to on MACD, but we are positive and above the zero line. So this still looks pretty good on Hawk. Earnings are in the near future. Just check that blog post I mentioned when earnings were on Hawk. Edwards Life Sciences is also a nice name to look at. This is in the cardiovascular medical supplies business group, industry group. Mikey's traded this one in the past as well from these lows down here. It based sideways. I think it might have gotten stopped out on one of these candles. I forget which. It did move higher and then moved lower, dropped down below the 10 period EMA, and then gathered its legs, gathered some strength, moved higher. A nice little flag here, basically a little cup and handle pattern, looking like it wants to break out. Earnings are in the near future. Check that blog post. I list the earnings date and particulars about this particular stock. Note, we want to see Stow turn back up, MACD continue turning as well. Both are above the zero line. This is looking pretty positive. Price above the 10 period MA, and the 20 period moving average is moving quickly underneath price. PGTI is a new name on the list. This is companies in the building, construction materials group. We're watching for this to move up to this trend line and possibly break out on this 10E Stow MACD setup. We're noting that volume is increasing. It traded 357,000 shares on Friday, so it's not a big share volume trader, but it does look good in an industry group that could be foretelling good things to come. They had last quarter a 100% increase in earnings, and for the previous 3 years their sales have been increasing by 191%. So this is indicating something good happening in this company's future. So just keep in mind that it does report soon, so check on the dates as well, which I list in the blog post referred to earlier. UVE also had a nice day on Friday, breaking above this Kirby level, volume by price, support resistance. We're watching Stow for a turn back up, MACD. Note that the longer term duration is back above the zero line now. That's a good sign. Momentum is shifting to the upside, so we could see this one break out, take this level out right here, and continue to trend higher like we saw back here in October through March. You want to see MACD above the zero line. That indicates that momentum is bullish. Any pullbacks are just telling you that the increase in momentum has leveled off a little bit, but the trend is still up as long as MACD stays above the zero line. Just keep that in mind when you're trading any of these stocks on the IBD50. Okay, note how long this stock has been above the zero line. Okay, so this is Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com. For you new traders, be sure to check out these top 5 or 6 videos, which will give you a better edge on understanding the markets, taking setups, and where to position yourself for the highest risk reward on your trade. In addition, if you don't subscribe to the blog, this is a spam-free site. Enter your email address in here and you can get these delivered to your email every day. You'll note my tweets are here, the watch list for the week or the day. You can just scroll down through these, keeping track of the trades that we're looking at, whether they're high type flags or Bollinger Band setups. It's also a place for me to document the trades and thoughts going into the weeks. So I hope this helps. Take care. We'll talk to you on the stream on Monday.